Hi everyone, my name's Pieta Valentine. I've written 2 books, The Resident's Voice from a Dementia Unit and The Resident's Rise from a Dementia Unit. So today's session is on a wife visiting her husband in a dementia facility 6 months into the process. So Winifred, the wife, Doug, the man in the dementia facility, he has Alzheimer's. He's early 80s and she's 81 now. He's about 83. So things have been going well. So it's 6 months in, so they've been okay. So in terms of routine, she comes every Tuesday for the movies, Thursday for the bingo, Saturday she takes Doug out to the beach with her friend Anne, and they have a beautiful walk along the beach and lunch out and a pizza. And she comes and visits him once a week at another time as well. So Doug's well supported, he's warm, he's well fed, he has a friend, next door neighbour, and all is well in the world. There was a stress point at one stage when we realised that he needed to really go for walks on the beach and have good long walks outside, not just in the village. But since we'd done that, he'd been okay. But what actually happened now, at 6 months on, so it's winter's arrived, and so it's not, it's a bit chilly going out to Sumner, but still Doug really liked it, so we just decided to keep with that routine and not change it, because that was his big joy, his big joy. Come what may, we did that. But what I was beginning to feel as I was at the facility quite a lot was I was starting to really feel for the other men who didn't have support in their lives. A lot of it was a big unit, 40 people in this dementia facility, and there were about 10 men total. And really there were only 2 or 3 or 4 men probably that had support of some kind, and the others really didn't have much support at all. I mean, visitors came occasionally, but not much, and a couple of them used to get really angry. They were so frustrated and stressed out. And me and Anne, actually, my friend Anne, who had been a carer in hospitals all her life, we had discussed this, wondered whether we could do anything about it, about helping the men especially, in the unit, because the women always seemed, even the new residents, the new women that came into the facility, it was a well-functioning unit. The staff were really supportive and excellent, and the women were well integrated quickly into the group, we found, with each other. They'd just sit around the TV and say hello to each other and how are you, and that was about all they needed to say. Have you got a family, maybe, the common question, and other than that, they'd just be happy sitting with each other and joining in the activities. But the men, somehow, you could just see them roam around like loners, and they didn't really connect the same, I mean, they connected when an old friend came in to see them. That was always good. But in terms of connecting with the residents themselves amidst each other, they just didn't do that. I mean, it was an exception that Doug had made friends with his next door neighbour, fortunately. So that was such a bonus for him. Otherwise, he could have been one of them. And anyway, I was wondering what we could do. So Annie and I had talked about it, and we wondered about whether we should initiate a support group, for the men and the partners and women, and support people, support relatives and friends of the men, and if we could help the men, like a men's shed type support group thing. We wondered whether we could do that. So I started off with introducing, I used to introduce myself to all the women, actually, of new residents coming in, but especially those that had husbands. Well, sorry, women are the ones that have husbands. So anyway, so I would introduce myself to the women. I didn't connect so much with the men who had wives in the unit, because the wives were usually all right anyway. So anyway, I would introduce myself to all the women who had men in the unit, and we started to become friendly. I was friendly with 2 or 3 women, and I talked about it with them, and I said, what do you think if we started a little support group on a Sunday afternoon, say 2 o'clock? that made a pretty busy weekend for me, because Saturday it was out to the beach with Doug and the lunch and the whole thing, most of the day it seemed. Then the support group on Sunday, but that was all right. I didn't have any, if all other friends had abandoned me pretty much, except Anne. Anyway, it was a good use of my time. So I said to these women, how would you feel about a support group on Sunday for the men and for the, relatives and partners and wives of the men on a Sunday at 2:00? And we can organise something like a little, afternoon tea and say some nice drinks or something, and a little bit of an activity, at that time, to try and help the men interact and socialise. And at that time we can get to know each other and exchange notes. Always a lot to know in a dementia unit. Who's doing what, and, what's coming up and this and that. And they all thought it was a great idea. So anyway, Anne, such a fabulous friend, said she'd support me with this, which is actually a big commitment, because she's coming to the Sumner Beach on Saturday for the, walk with Doug, and then Sunday with the support group. But she decided to eliminate the extra visit with Doug in the week, so at least she had the week more or less free, but Saturday was full. Anyway, so I do the baking, because I don't mind baking so much as cooking's not my thing, but baking I'm okay at. I do the baking, scones or shortbread or whatever. Anne would make all the cups of tea and Milo and this and that, and we'd sit down at the table, put a cloth on, checked cloth. I used to bring a checked cloth, red and white, put it, over the table, butter everything, jam everything. Sometimes I'd bring cream, they all seem to love that. That went quickly. I'm quite good at that sort of thing, putting it in a basket and making it all look nice. Sometimes a bunch of flowers, when it was spring, and put the flowers in the centre of the table, look quite nice. Anyway, did all that, and it became quite a thing, I mean, it didn't take long for the word to go around, and certainly the staff would encourage the men to go, and the relatives of the men. It actually became quite a big group, and we'd all sit around and discuss things. And that happened naturally, because there's always so much to know that actually the relatives, the wives, were grateful to be able to have a forum, to be able to ask questions, because when you're new coming in, there's so much that you have to know, like, why is it that, my husband's jersey's a matted mess after going to the laundry, not having been told you need to hand wash it yourself, they didn't know that. And, not to bring in valuables, but to just bring in stuff that's not valuable, because there are wanderers and things can go missing and do go missing. That, that hearing aids and glasses are kept overnight in the back of the nurse's station. So if you arrive and your husband's got no hearing aids, go to the front desk and the nurse carer will have left them there. All these important things. Otherwise you arrive to visit your husband, he's got no hearing aids, no glasses, and you wonder what's going on. You think, it's stressful. So once you know all the information, it's easy. So anyway, lots of exchange of information at this lovely little group, and the men started to get to know each other with their wives, with the other wives. They felt comfortable. It was purely for them, and activities. We did jigsaw puzzles and beautiful, got a little library going of beautiful coffee table books on trains and tractors and New Zealand, pictures of New Zealand, and put those all out. That was a big win. We gathered together all our coffee table books that each of us had at home, and I used to stack them at the bottom of Doug's wardrobe at the back. There's always, at least that was one free corner in the room. The back corner, you put your shoes at the front and all the books at the back. I had quite a good back, so did Anne, so we could lift them out, just a few, for the day, and had quite a pile there. I mean, they got ripped a bit, but, we'd keep the good ones at home, and sometimes we'd take them to and from home if we didn't want the picture books of New Zealand to get ripped up. But the ones on cars and tractors didn't matter much. And anyway, it became quite a thing, and the women really appreciated it. The men started to make friends. They weren't so isolated. Even the men that didn't have relatives, they could come, of course, and so they could make friends with all of us. At least they had some company and some support. And it was such a fabulous thing. I mean, this just went on for the whole time that Doug was at the dementia facility. And I felt happy I was contributing, and we all enjoyed it. And the men got benefit. It was fantastic. So that's the end. Thank you for your subscriptions and likes. I appreciate.